All right, starting to see some people trickling in here. I'm sure more people will be joining as we go on, but I'll go ahead and get us kicked off now and go from there. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining again today. For those of you who I haven't met yet, I'm Troy. I lead issuer success here at Net Capital. Today's topic is how to acquire investors using influencer marketing with BrandPilot. This is actually part two, getting to $1 million raised. If you missed part one, don't worry. They'll be giving a quick recap at the beginning of the event here. As a quick summary about BrandPilot, their technology and services have helped over 100 clients find the right social influencers to tell their company story to investors. And we're joined by John, their CRO, and then Gal, their marketing and BD manager, who's also an influencer herself. A few housekeeping items before we get kicked off here. This event's going to be recorded, and we'll share the recording with you after the event, as well as distribute contact information about BrandPilot, all of that good stuff will be sent after the event. And then if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A and chat feature, and then we'll get to it as soon as we can. Otherwise, we'll make sure to leave time at the end for questions as well. And with that, John and Gal, I will let you take it from here.
Okay, thank you, Troy. Hi, everyone. I want to share my screen, but I need you to enable that for me, please.
Yes, and I will do that.
We're very excited to be here with you today.
You should be good to go.
Yeah. Okay. All right, you can all see my screen, right?
Yep.
All right, thank you. So welcome. We are here today to talk about how you can use and leverage influencer marketing to help you fund your dream, your company, your startup. And so this is the agenda that we had set up for the two webinars. Last time we went over stages 1 and 2. I'll be doing the recap right now. And then today we're going to dive in after the recap deeper into stage 3 and next steps. So let us start by introducing ourselves. John, why don't you go ahead and start?
Hi, everyone, and greetings from Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. Yeah, I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at BrandPilot. I've been an entrepreneur for well over 10 years, and I started an influencer marketing company with the Property Brothers, these celebrities that have a show. They fix up people's homes. You might know them. So they were actually my business partners for the very first influencer marketing company I started back in 2014. So probably we were certainly the first to get into that space. So we've been excited to talk to you about it. And then I'm also a professor of entrepreneurship and have worked with over 400 startups, all trying to raise money like yourself.
Thank you, John. So before I go into talking about myself, I want to use this momentum for you to introduce yourselves in the chat. Where are you calling in from? What's your company? What's your mission? What's your problem that you're solving? Where are you in the fundraising process? I would love to hear that. And if you were here last time, also let us know if you were here last time, because you already know I'm very active in the chat and we actually have conversations and get to know each other. So I'm Gal, last name Benron, but you can find me on social media as Gal Beepole. I am a marketing and business development manager here at BrandPilot AI. This is the kind of stuff I do. And beyond that, I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I'm a dance and somatic success mentor, and I don't consider myself an influencer, but I do present as one. I had to do this for my business. I had to learn how to use social media and leverage influence in order to make my business work, which is exactly what we're doing here. So as I said, we're going to be discussing stage 3. And before that, let us recap. So stage 1, we divided it between raising between $0 and $50,000. And this is when you truly rely on yourself and your network. So this is your first and maybe second circle of people around you. And we kind of based it on 3 pillars. First pillar is face-to-face conversations with your people. It can be really easy to step back and start creating separations once you have a business and you need help. I want to encourage you to truly have face-to-face conversations with people. It is so different to pick up the phone or meet for coffee with somebody in your network, in your circle, than it is to post a post on LinkedIn and hope for the best, right? And so what you want to do is start training your body to be in the room with people who can help you, and train your body that you can experience rejection and you can experience failure, because this is a series of failure after failure after failure. And failure is not a negative thing, it is just part of the process. Second pillar is that video rules. When you are trying to communicate your value proposition, what your company is about, what's the problem that you're solving, we're in 2024. What used to work 10, 15 years ago, a corporate presentation or a nice PDF, it's not going to cut it now. You want to communicate the passion that you have, the dedication that you have, and the commitment that you and your 1-person or 10-person team carries to solving this problem. And the best way to do that is to capture your essence on video. So always start with a pitch video and don't skip that, because that is the most crucial thing that you can do to develop trust with your audience, whether it is your first circle or whether it's new people who are going to get to know you through that. And then lastly, again, practicing the muscle, cultivating the skill of asking for help. And help starts by spreading the word. So when you're at this stage and you have $0 to $50,000 funding, the easiest ask you can do from the people who know you, trust you, and want to support you, hey, could you share my pitch video? Could you share that on LinkedIn? Could you email it in your newsletter? Could you send it to your family? Shame is going to pop up and tell you, oh, it's not polite to ask for that. And what are you going to do with that shame? You're going to slay it. You're going to cultivate the muscle of asking for help. That is our first stage. And so what we want, our takeaway lessons, and we dove deeper into that during the first webinar, so you can really go in and see the conversations we had there. Practice being in front of the camera so that you can be comfortable when you create your own video, and then cultivate the muscle of asking for help, ask your network to share. Stage number 2, which is 50,000 to 150,000. This is where you're not starting from scratch, but you're at the second stage of starting from scratch. So this is where you want to start building presence online and credibility. And the way to do that is around, again, 3 pillars. Number 1, build your social media channels. Focus on LinkedIn and maybe 1, maximum 2 other channels. You don't want to spread yourself too thin. But when you start creating a presence on social media, that's when people that see your pitch video, they start following you, and that's where they can have a conversation with you, you being you and or your company. Number 2, evangelists. Evangelists are your thesis advisor, your market product fit interviewers, your friends who actually try the product and really believe in it. You really want to leverage them to start speaking about your product. And again, emotions are going to come up. You're going to want to resist asking them for this favor. And in the first webinar, we really went into how can you create a system that is helpful for you to ask them for that favor of, can you make a video about my company so that I can get money and actually make this dream come true? So we really went into detail in the last webinar. So you should really watch that if you want to hone in on that. But really see how you can leverage their passion, experience, and commitment to you as a person to get the word out there. Lastly, small scale trial and error with influencers. Influencers are like evangelists that you pay, and they are not necessarily, they don't know you, but they're really key figures in your industry. And so what you want to do is to start with a small budget, understand what it means to work with influencers, and really take whatever content they create for you and use that everywhere else. Truly maximize your ROI, because what usually influencers do is they create content and they post it on their channels. What you want to do is post it on your channels as well, post it on your website, treat that as a testimonial, and share it everywhere. So What we learned here is that content is queen. You want to, when you build your your presence and your credibility, and if you've never created content before, it can be a pretty isolating experience and pretty weird. And so that's when people start putting up walls and being very professional. The way to do that is to always connect to your passion, come back to your why, give yourselves time to create content that's not rushed so that your body can relax into it and just be able to speak about what you truly believe in. That's it. When it comes to your evangelists, again, we went into that really much more in depth in the first webinar, but there are frameworks to make it easier for them and for you to make it so that they help you spread the word, whether it's by creating content or sharing that on their socials. There are ways to do that. And when it comes to influencer marketing and you're just starting out and you're trying out and you're trying to see, okay, who do I resonate with? Who has a really loyal and engaged follower base and not just, oh, 1 million followers. Go out of your way to find out who's a real key authority figure in your industry. And remember that bigger is not necessarily better. You're not really paying for the views because, well, John will get into it later, but you want somebody with an engaged core audience. And whatever they create, you can always boost it later. Okay. Any questions in the audience or chat? No, I'm not seeing. Folks, I really want you to introduce yourself in the chat. I want to learn about your companies. Don't be shy. Treat this as the embodiment of what we're talking about. I want to learn about you. What can you tell me about you? So I'm going to hand it over to John to take it from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Gal. Yeah, so we're going to jump into stage 3. And just so you know, we are also entrepreneurs. And so it's important that we're all part of the same tribe. We're all part of the same family. It's important that we talk to you really candidly. And the first thing I would say is that dividing fundraising into 3 simple stages is not how it works at all. We don't want to have any illusions that is nothing about what we're doing and what you're doing is at all this simple. So that's where feel free to call out some things, challenge any ideas we have, challenge anything we're stating. It's rough out there. And when you're a startup like us, or you're an entrepreneur like us, there's no safety net, right? Everyone working at the bank has a nice, safe place to land. We don't. So we speak really candidly and we get to the core of it. So we'll jump into it, Gal. And the notion here around stage 3, getting to $1 million, all we're really talking about is how you move up the chain from, hey, how do we get that first money, which is less sophisticated, it's more personal. And then how do we design a system that maybe is a little more sophisticated, and how do we get investment from strangers? And that's all we're talking about in stage 3. So we can jump into the next slide there. Oh, so Gal was going to give some examples of when we talk about influencer content for investor relations. We just wanted to give you some examples so you all understand. Now, what I would preface here before you see these is that most of our companies are publicly traded companies already. The bulk of our customers have public stocks. They're mining companies. They're tech companies that are publicly traded. And that's different than what you would do as a startup, for sure. Your stuff will be a lot more authentic, but we wanted to show you some examples of our work. So I'll turn it over to Gal.
Okay, great. I'm not sure if it's going to share the audio. So can somebody just let me know if you can hear the audio? Okay. This is Kyle. He's awesome.
All eyeballs are on gold. In this recessionary environment, we're seeing gold over $2,000 an ounce, with expectation and analysts putting price targets as high as $4,000, leading to a lot of expectation out of miners and explorers. And one precious metal explorer with good upside potential has got to be Nev Gold, trading on the TSXV under NAU for around 40 cents, or a $27 million market cap, is up 25% already year to date. And this rally could just be the start, as this junior miner already has over 1.1 million ounces of gold resources and is looking to deliver over 3 million ounces by the end of 2023. And the reason for some 10x potential here is the company's industry peers are trading at roughly $70 per ounce of gold in the ground, while Nev Gold is trading for less than $15 per ounce at its current resource estimates. So, a significantly larger resource estimate could see the company's current $21.9 million market cap soar by as much as 10x. Now, Nev Gold has 4 primary projects.
So we can probably pause it, Gal,
I
just for
know.
there. So just to give an example, now this is a different use case, right? This is retail investors who trade in resources. But the point of it, it's not about the content or if you like the music per se, is that this is what resonates with that investment audience. And it's somebody else telling their story. So you, as us here today, we would not have known about this company if Kyle hadn't mentioned it, and he's going into the details as to why it's a good investment. So let's look at a couple of different, we'll just do a couple more quick, Gal, and then we can.
Yeah. And I also just wanted to point out, you saw how he started with speaking about the industry first. So that really, if I follow Kyle because he talks about stocks, I follow him because he gives good information. So he starts with talking about the industry and then says, oh, by the way, an anomaly in this industry you should pay attention to is this company. So it just gives you an example of how it can seamlessly fit into their own style. So it doesn't feel like an ad. This is Siobhan. She does Hyper Academy for Personal Finance.
As a Canadian, how can you start investing in US companies without having to pay in US dollars? And the answer is Canadian Depository Receipts. So CDRs are shares of global companies that actually trade on a Canadian stock exchange. They trade in Canadian dollars and they pretty much let you own the company, but not the currency. So what that means is you're actually able.
That's not a very flattering pause frame. Siobhan here did a campaign for CIBC, and you can see this is a very different style, and she's replying to a comment from one of her followers. So I love this because this is where she gives value to her followers, her audience, as she promotes a campaign. So that could be something that you really want to think about. Should we do the last one, John?
Now, for the sake of time, we can skip over. But so here's where I would just give a little inspiration to everyone out here. We're not saying create content like this because it might not be appropriate for an early stage investment. But here's something I think is really unique that retail investors might be interested. If they're interested in your idea to invest in a startup company, there's only a couple of ways to do it. You can either be super rich, in which case you're validated as a accredited investor. At least that's what we have in Canada. Like you got to make a certain amount of money to be an accredited investor. Then I can actually write financial instruments to startup companies like you. The other one is that I belong to an angel network. Usually the same kind of thing. I'm a fairly wealthy person. I belong to an angel network, and that angel network does a term sheet with you and have their own lawyers and that sort of thing. Or I could be one of the people on Dragon's Den, or no, what do you guys call it in America? It's called Shark Tank. Yeah. So I could be one of the people on Shark Tank who's rich and invested in these folks. That's really the only ways that people, or most of the ways that people can invest in startups. But one of the messages I think we should go to market with for all these companies is that if you're interested in what we do, we're a startup working in healthcare, we're doing robotics, we're doing a virtual reality surgery for surgeons. There's no other way to invest in a company like ours and diversify your portfolio into startups unless you go through something like Net Capital, right? That's it. This is a chance for the average person to be able to invest in a startup in a way they normally wouldn't be able to. And so that's kind of the story. I think if I was you, I would go out the door with, in addition to what you're doing. This is how I would position it. So that's my 2 cents on that as we get inspired by this content. So we can keep going, Gal.
When all eyeballs are on gold in this.
Not what I meant to do. 1 second.
Here's an AI stock that has been surging over the past month.
As a
Oh
Canadian,
my God.
how can you start investing in US?
Hold on. Okay.
Yeah, you can just skip to the other. We'll skip these 2 as well, just because everyone's got a sense of it.
Talk about the views.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is an example of a company we work with. Once again, it's a mining company called Talisker. We won't show you the video, but we'll share the slide deck. This is a bit different, where Zach takes a very measured long-term, it's a long form video where he's sitting and sort of giving a lesson on why this is a good investment opportunity over 7 minutes. Do you want to preview it just for a second, Gal? I don't want to tease people and then not.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Zach Hartley, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to give you my full review and summary on a very exciting gold company exploration into production at an amazing time.
And Gal, even if you just want to skip ahead so you can see some of the, when he includes the visuals. Telling where you've got visuals and graphics that are coming on board. They're telling your story in a really important way. So that's just an example. What's interesting here is the company had created their own content on YouTube 2 years ago, and it has 700 views. Whereas this got, you know, it's 11,000 now, but it got up to 11,000 in the first week. And so you can see where this becomes a really important way to try and scale a message. So that's it. I mean, I won't belabor the content piece any more than that, Gal. But
my name is Zach Hartley.
Hi, I'm sorry. It's my first time doing a slide with.
no, it's okay. They jump on every time. So we can jump into here. So now we're talking about social media and how you create content like this. So let's jump ahead. We're going to talk a little bit about social media in general, and we're going to talk about this notion of organic versus paid. So my apologies if you know all this already, but not everyone might. But when we talk in terms in social media, when we speak of when a post is viewed by the followers of the influencer or the followers of your channel, we're calling that organic. Those people you for it. So, you know, there's benefits to that. They're there for a very specific reason. So if you are, once again, find an influencer who's got, you know, lots of followers who are looking for interesting tech and investment opportunities in healthcare, sure, that's what we call organic traffic. Paid traffic is exactly what we're all familiar with, and where we pay these social media platforms to, you know, turn our content into sponsored ads. And so those are the two sort of ways that content can get out into the world. Now there's a couple more slides. We're going to explain why we're showing you those two realities of social media. We're going to talk about something called social boosting. And social boosting is really just that paid element of it. So if I'm an influencer and I've got 100, my followers will see that content. We'll talk a little bit more about the truth of that or not. You can go backwards, Gal, just 1 sec. And so my followers can see it, but what we found at BrandPilot AI is the best strategy for all of us is to create our content, especially with influencers, but then also boost it a little bit. So that's what we're going to talk about for the next few minutes. So you can jump over. The reason we're talking about this is I wanted to make sure everyone's really aware of what happens on social media in reality. And so there's this thing called reach rate. And I put all the information here, but I'll tell you in general. The reach rate is the difference between the number of followers Kim Kardashian has and the number of human beings that actually saw the post she did yesterday. And that's a big difference, right? And what we're finding out and what the data is telling us that for really large accounts, they're only reaching only about 7.6% of an account's followers actually see that thing. So Kim Kardashian being an example, when she posts, 100 million people don't see that post. In reality, what we're seeing is somewhere in the neighborhood of about less than 10% of her followers will actually see that post. And so we're just trying to help you level set against the reality of what's we think is happening on social media versus what is really happening. So that's something I want to talk about. And then we know that's a phenomenon. That's just the nature of social media that most people don't know. So if you want to skip to the next one. What we find works best is instead of trying to hire Kim Kardashian and believing you're going to get 100 million followers, this reach rate phenomena happens less when the account has a smaller number of followers. So the bigger the account, the bigger the difference between that true reach, and the follower account. Whereas smaller accounts tend to have a reach rate that would be much better than 7%. That does two things for you. One is, you know, you're actually probably reaching more people than you think with a smaller creator. But by hiring a smaller creator and maybe spending a little less money on that content, you can save some extra money to do boosting. And so the example we give is if someone had 250,000 followers, I actually think at that level, the reach rate would be a little bit higher, probably be north of 10% at that level. But let's just use the simple math we had before. 250,000 followers actually reaches 19,000 human beings that might take action, buy your product, invest in your company. So this is where boosting comes in, and we think it's a really powerful way of looking at influencer marketing. So if you skip to the next one, Gal. This is CPM. So all that means is cost per millennia, cost per thousand. And I think everyone knows this already, probably, but just so you know, that's what it means. And so these are some industry stats that if you advertise on Meta, so Facebook or Instagram, if you were to boost a post, you tend to pay about $15 to $17 per 1,000 views. But at least you know you're getting 1,000, right? Like at least you know that when you pay this fee, 1,000 people are going to see this content. So it's kind of a neat fail-safe for that. TikTok is around 10 to 5. And so let's say we took $1,000 and sponsored some content. You can just skip to the next animation. And one more. If you were to spend an extra $1,000 on someone, you could actually double your reach. So this is this notion of, hey, if I hired a creator to do a great video for me that highlights my company and what we do and why it's a good investment opportunity and how doing it through Net Capital is a really interesting way for people to actually get into the startup market without being an angel investor. We could probably hire someone for 250,000 followers, pay them $1,000. They'll probably reach 20,000 people. And then we could take another $1,000 and instantly double the reach of this campaign with that. So that's just a concept that we use in all of our brand pilot campaigns and we execute as well. But it's something important that I thought everyone should at least have a base level understanding of. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about social boosting. We can skip ahead. Okay, now that we've done that, now you've got some analytics to track on social media. I'll turn it over to Gal to discuss that.
So we all know we should track it, right? The issue starts when we try to reinvent the wheel ourselves. So when we hire influencers, let's say we hire 5 influencers and we go with a campaign and they help us put our story out there. How do you keep track of this influencer on TikTok, that influencer on Instagram, this one on YouTube, and this one on LinkedIn? So first of all, our first advice, don't reinvent the wheel, use existing tools. Our platform does exactly that. I think we have screenshots coming up. Our second one, this is the simplest, most underutilized and often forgotten tip. Track your campaigns with a specific hashtag to the campaign, not just the company. So for example, if you're Absinthia and you're doing your first campaign, which is maybe a pilot campaign, I would suggest using a hashtag like Absinthia Start or Start Absinthia. And then when you do your next one, you have more data and you have a different goal for that campaign. And so the campaign hashtag would be a different one. And then when you actually put in the hashtag, and we'll see that, you'll be able to see exactly what comes up. And then lastly, when you collaborate with creators on posts, you can see their analytics real time at a much deeper level than you can with other tools, external tools. So let's go further into all of this. This is our platform. Over here, what you're seeing is an actual campaign analytics dashboard from a company we run campaigns for. You can see the number of influencers. So their campaign was 6 influencers. The combined number of followers is over almost 800,000 people. The number of engagements, interactions was about 2,000, and you can see the combined or average engagement rate. You can go into a lot of details here. You can see the gender split. Again, this is IR, and unfortunately, it mirrors heteronormative society split when it comes to investing in the stock market. So this is predominantly male. And you can see also the age. Hashtags. So this is what I discussed. I went into Instagram and I put in Dove. When you look at Dove, you get memes, you get soap, you get hair mask, you get body wash, and what looks to me like ice cream, but I know it's not ice cream. However, if you put in the campaign hashtag that you created, or a more specific campaign hashtag, Dove deodorant, then you get a much more accurate snapshot of how this hashtag is performing. So we did not use one of our clients here. I used Dove to illustrate the point of you want to create specific campaign hashtags so that your job is easier when you go in and look through the hashtags. Also, let me know in the questions if this is making sense or if something is unclear. Lastly, collaborations for quick influencer insights. So this is, again, a very unflattering screenshot of a collaborative reel I did with one of my clients. She has a podcast, she interviewed me. And so you can see here that this is a collaboration between the podcast platform, herself, and myself. And so I have insights. I didn't upload this. She uploaded it to her page, but I was able to throw my own from my own Instagram. I was able to go into the insights and see what's happening here, how many people have, were reached, how many interactions. If you scroll down, you can also see the number of times people replay the video or where in the video the drop off happens. And so this is something that is just really immediate and very, very transparent. Okay. Over to John. And please.
Yeah, so the first few points we've talked about, I know it seems like a social media lesson, but the purpose at this stage is that you've moved beyond your personal network and you're trying to reach strangers. And that's why things like understanding how social media really works, understanding the analytics of it, that's how you get your message out to as many people as you can on social, which is what we're talking about. The rest of this section is really a sales course, right? Then what we're going to talk about today is really going to sound and feel like you're in a sales course. I'm biased. I'm a sales professional, so this is what I love to talk about. But when it comes to raising money, it really is, it really feels like a sales cycle as opposed to anything else. You need to build a personal relationship with people, educate them over time, take them on this journey with you. Very rarely is anyone going to look at something and go, that's a cool idea, and then invest in it right away. It always requires some personal relationship, some personal development, something you're engaging with them to get it out. And I'm sure I don't quite know the stats on Net Capital, but I would be surprised if people are just anonymously investing on Net Capital. My theory is that Net Capital is just the perfect vehicle for startups to access the retail market without being public, right? And so all of the conversations, all the people that invest in that capital probably have some kind of at least a personal dialogue going with the people they're investing in. So that's what we're going to talk about next. So you can jump into the next piece of it, where we're going to talk about this notion of a sales funnel. And you've all seen this before. Everyone has seen it. You're sick in the face of it, but it is true. We keep showing it on slides because it is actually true. That from the investor market, you need to think of, okay, I need a lot of people to know me and understand what we're doing and understand we're asking for money. And we don't expect 100% of those people to invest. Instead, we're going to try and bring as many of them along this journey with us. And at the end of it, some of them will invest. So I think we all get that. So what we're going to talk about in the next few slides is just this notion of thinking of the potential investors you've now collected. And how are you going to manage that? And how are you going to try and bring as many of them through this process to invest in your company as possible? It starts with, initial engagement and qualification. I know we say we would take money from anyone. I am also a starving entrepreneur and would take money from anyone. I've said that out loud, I'm sure. But understand you do need to qualify your lead investors the same way, right? Not everyone is probably a good fit for what you're trying to do. And then there's a middle part of your funnel where people are aware of you, and then you're going to build a relationship with them. And all of it is to try and bring people along so they get comfortable enough to this point where they're converting, they're investing in your company. That's what I'm going to do over the next few slides. So Gal, we want to jump into it. So the very first thing that everyone needs to be doing, which is obviously happening on Net Capital because of the platform they're on, is you've got to do lead capture. You got to be capturing these people that show any kind of interest. So we spend a lot of time, we're a publicly traded company. And just so you know that we're all in the same boat together, we're publicly traded not because we made so much money and did an IPO like you see on TV. We're publicly traded because we did a reverse takeover of a company that was already listed on a Canadian stock exchange. And we rebranded it, and now we're trading on the market. We feel more like a small startup than we do a publicly traded company. So the advice we're giving is coming from the heart. It's stuff we do ourselves. Lead capture is most important. Anyone that knows about you, or you're trying to get your message about, hey, this is what we're doing. It's really, really interesting. And we've got an interesting way for non-angel investors to get involved through Net Capital. You should want to learn more about this. You've got to be capturing the leads. I won't read all the slides. I'll save them. You can look them up yourself. But this notion, name, email address, phone number, you need to capture that information so that you can reach out to them and start that relationship. And then that initial outreach, you've got to take the effort to do personal personalization. If you get tempted to go down this MailChimp rabbit hole of, I'm going to just template everything, it's so tempting to do. It's nice to just think that automation is going to go. My experience as a person raising funds and dealing with investors and as a salesperson, that I think the world is going backwards in a different way, and that we're trying to do more personal outreach now, and we're relying less on these spammy tools. I would do personal outreach to everyone that comes into your network as fast as possible too. There's a correlation between closing deals and how fast you can respond. So you're just personal outreach, introducing your company, and you're going to want to schedule a call with them, right? It's still like an investor meeting. You know, we've all done it before. We've pitched VCs, we've pitched angels. I have too, right? You got to get a meeting organized. You got to go meet people and have a communication with them. Same thing here, only it's on a more individual level. And then you're going to want to qualify those meetings, understand their investment criteria. Hey, have you invested in startups before? Have you invested in whatever it is we're doing that makes us unique? And then you're going to want to assess if they're a fit. Now, I understand that as startups, we're going to go, 99% of them are a fit because they have money, and we need money for sure. But just, you might want to do a little gut check on that. And then you also want to gauge their level of interest. One of the things that happens in the top of funnel is if someone's interested in what you're doing, there's going to be lots of people that sort of are just kicking tires, we would say, right? Just testing the waters. It's okay to ask them, hey, are you really serious about investing in a startup company like ours? Are you just here because you're interested in the problem we're solving? It's okay to ask those qualification questions. We'd encourage you to be pretty candid early on. So that's that top of funnel advice we would give you. But the important thing is that you need to have a system for this, right? Anything you're doing on social, promoting your company and the ability to invest, have something where you can capture name, email address, and phone number. That's it. Okay, Gal, we'll take it down a notch. So now in the middle of the funnel, on the next slide there. So now we're building relationships. Just because someone met us doesn't mean they're going to invest. No one would invest in us right away, having just met us. Instead, you need to think of this as you're going to bring them through a journey. You're going to keep giving them information and intel and meeting with them until they get comfortable enough to want to invest. And so this is where you need to have a plan for regular communication. You've built a list of potential investors. Now it's going to be regular communication. You're sending them targeted emails. You're updating them on milestones. In these cases, you can template it, right? You don't need to write the same email for everyone. If you've something really exciting has just happened to your company, or you've had a breakthrough, or just you want to give people regular updates, that stuff there you can template a bit. But it's important to keep people involved. They haven't invested yet, but you want to keep them along. Ideally, you tailor the content to their interest. And then you also want to start inviting them to webinars, investor events. Start thinking, imagine hosting a webinar for potential investors that doesn't just go over what your product does and all this stuff, but actually talks to them with a pitch deck for investors. Here's a total addressable market. Here's what we believe is the payback period. Other companies in the space have earning multiples of this. Like, that's all stuff that would be really interesting for a potential investor to do. Also, you're going to want to personalize investor updates. It sort of goes to what we were saying before, but try and customize reports and presentation highlighting your company's progress. Maybe they've been following you for a couple of quarters as you develop your tech or you get more sales. The other one that anyone who's really serious about this, and I don't know if you've done this before, but we tend to have something called a data room. So when I've done my investments, there usually is a folder that you would store all the information that a serious investor would need to be able to go and access. And this is sort of anything. Your pitch deck would live there. Previous financials would live there. You're going to want to come off as professional. You need it. We call it a data room, but you need a folder where investors go to get all the information investors need. So that's the sort of stuff that you can start sharing with these people. And then finally, you also want to become a thought leader in your subject. People want to invest in experts, right? Nothing makes me happier than finding out a startup that the founder's story is, hey, I did this job for 20 years. Every day I had this problem. So I invented a thing that solves this problem. And I know so you're like, oh my goodness. Okay, now I want to hear what you have to say. People want to invest in folks that are experts in the market they're going after. And so creating content and pushing that out around thought leadership, articles that you've created that help tell your story, relevant industry topics. Don't just send them out into the ether. This is the stuff that can be specifically sent to that potential investor lead list that you've been generating. Also, you're going to want to participate in industry conferences. What we found interesting is at least inviting potential influencers to those same conferences. Hey, I noticed you downloaded our investor deck. You must be kind of interested in us. Just so you know, we're attending this conference on cybersecurity or something. We thought you might want to join as well, or we're speaking at this thing. Constantly keeping them engaged. And so you're creating this tether between you and the folks that could be potential investors. I'll skip to the next one, which is the bottom of funnel. And this is when people you've been engaged, they've been going, they've been receptive to the content you've been sending them. You've invited them to a webinar. Maybe they attended. All of a sudden, you need to be taking notes as, wow, these 10, we got 100 people on our investor lead list. 10 of them showed up to the webinar. That's a good sign. Maybe we should personally reach out. And then we're saying, hey, we're doing this round. The round closes in a couple of months. Do you want to invest? Here's the next steps. So you've got to have due diligence support. So make it easy for them to do their due diligence. It goes back to what I said before, right? You need a data room that they can go in and see all the information an investor needs. I'm sure you all have that already. You're going to want to facilitate introductions to not just yourself, but either other investors, key members of the team, a product manager, a CTO, right? Think about what you would want to see from a company if you were to give them your hard-earned cash as an investment. And then address any concerns of promptly and with transparency. Speed is, they don't know us yet. And so the only interactions they have with them is how fast we can respond to emails. That's a pretty powerful one I try and do every day. Is speed of response is really important. I probably don't do it as much as I'd like, but that's an indicator of professionalism. That's what we want. And then deal negotiation. I'm not the expert at that, and this is not the purpose of this course, but it's, working with legal counsel, getting term sheets done. You've got all that in place. Really, what I wanted to highlight here for you is just to remember to treat your investor funnel as a funnel, right? These are contacts that you're doing all your hard work on, going to events and all your social media content. You're boosting the posts. We told you some of the insights to do that. And as you collect leads, right? One, make sure you collect leads. And then two, have a plan for how you're going to nurture those leads to this point. And so that's the main things we advise on. So I think, Gal, that's our last slide. I know I want to be mindful of time. And I don't know if we wanted to pause and open it up for questions here before we go into just our final recap, or if there's anything in the chat. Now's a good time to ask any questions you've been sitting on.
Also happy to answer questions if you just want to raise your hand. I don't know if you can unmute yourself, but I don't see any questions so far in the Q&A or the chat.
Yeah, we'll just wait for Troy. I'm not sure if you wanted to open it up for Q&A.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And Troy, did I miss, and I don't want to, my notion of telling the story of Net Capital being a very unique way for the average retail investor to invest in startups. Am I off base with that, or is that part of the story that you're telling? I don't want to say anything that's not appropriate or in line with the value prop.
No, absolutely. I think that aligns really, really well, John, with what our mission is. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So everything that you said, I think, aligns with what our mission is, for sure.
So John, we have a question from Steve, and Steve is asking, early on it's a numbers game and later it's a very personal game.
Exactly. Yeah. Same way with sales, same way with everything. And it gets more personal, right? The longer people have been on your radar, the more engaged they are. And eventually it comes down to, maybe you need to meet some of these people in person before they want to invest. And that's kind of fair. If someone's going to throw $10,000, $20,000 at a project, they're probably going to want to meet the people involved. So no, you nailed it.
Absolutely. And I think one question that I will ask as well is, I know we've talked a little bit or two about BrandPilot and what you all do, but I think now would be a good time to also tell all the issuers here how you guys can help them with targeting influencers too.
Yeah, take it, Gal, if you want to take it away. We got some slides that talk about.
Yeah, sure. So let's first recap, and if you have any more questions, feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll address them after this. But just summarizing our takeaway lessons. Hire smaller influencers and save the money that you would have spent on a larger influencer to boost your content. Because when you do it yourself, you have control over who sees it, and you have a guaranteed result of how many see it. Number two, scratch your existing solutions. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Use systems. We have free trial on our system that John is going to tell you about. try to collaborate with your influencers just so you can get a feel. Maybe you'll collaborate with a few and you see that you don't even have time to go into your Instagram and check it, and then you know you don't need that. But it's really important for you to give it a try. And then lastly, nurture your community. Pour into your community. Okay. John, you want to take it from here? You're muted.
What we do professionally, there's a couple of ways we can help. One is, and if you skip to the next slide, we have software that helps people do social media listening. It is a tool called Spectrum that we've built. It's got 300 million creators on it. It's a way to find communities of people on social that might be in your market. It's a way to do social listening around the hashtags that people are talking about in your market and sort of become a part of it through that. You can analyze influencers to try and maybe work with them, analyze people that maybe you want to reach out to just for market validation, not even for influencer marketing per se, but we have a whole platform there. We'll send you a link. We have a 30-day free trial, so you're more than welcome to give it a try and see if it's a good fit for you. But the bulk of our business is really in executing influencer marketing campaigns for folks. And so we would actually become an extension of your marketing team. We have a system and a process where we would work with you to figure out, all right, who's the exact kind of people you're trying to target as investors and who are the best influencers that could tell your story for you. Then we do the process of going out, finding them, creating a list for you to review. You decide who you want to work with. We help you negotiate the best rate. We don't take a cut of, we're not agents of these folks. We work on your behalf trying to negotiate the best rate for you. We would oversee the production of their content and making sure it goes live, working with you on your call to action, make sure there's a place to capture these leads. So that's a service we offer. And for everyone on Net Capital, and because we're all startups and we're a startup too, and you're startups and you're trying to raise money and we all get it. We're all at the ramen noodle stage of our lives, despite my gray hair. I'm ready to be in the steak department, but anyway, ramen noodles is fine. But yeah, we can offer our campaign services at a 40% discount to anyone who's raising money on Net Capital. We're really happy to just get started. And then Gal, I think there's another slide we have about some of that next steps.
Yeah, and Cynthia just asked how she can do the trial.
Sorry, what was it? It was
how can people sign up to do the trial?
Yeah, we're going to send that. Troy will send the link out to, we'll send the link out to everybody. It's just a link you click on and it's a free trial access. You don't have to put your credit card in or anything. It's a totally free trial that you can go.
We also have another question from Mark about, not sure how a small company has the bandwidth to deal with thousands of potential investors with no idea of whether they're a potential 500 or 5,000 investor. How do you recommend executing this?
That's a high class problem to have, is what I would say. I mean, the notion that you're going to have thousands of potential investors is, I mean, being amazing. That would be a nice problem to have. One of the ways you could get around that is in your lead capture, you could ask questions that sort of help narrow that down. Hey, are you someone who's actively interested in investing in a startup company like ours? Right? You can put questions in your lead capture to help that. It's not appropriate for you because a lot of interested investors use Gmail accounts, but to answer Mark's question, in sales, one of the things we do to filter out people that are just wasting our time and possible customers is we won't accept Gmail addresses or Hotmail addresses. If you don't work for a company, you're never going to be a potential for us. And so we don't call you. Now, that's not appropriate for you guys. You want Gmail addresses for sure, but this is an example of how you could filter people out. But no, I think Mark, I wouldn't worry about it, right? If you're a small company, the chances that you're going to have, lead list of thousands of investors, I'll buy you a beer if I'm wrong about this, but don't worry about it. Just get going, start, be as personal as possible, create your lead list, nurture every single investor lead you get as if it's the fire that you're going to cook your your meal on camping. Like it's really important. Don't worry about that. I'll buy you a beer if you are overwhelmed with investor leads. And is there any way to get transcripts without having to sign up for Otter? I don't. Oh, you mean of this this webinar? I think Dan wrote that.
Yeah, Dan might be focused on this webinar. We'll be sure to send a couple takeaways afterward from this session as well. We have some notes that we'll share. as well as the recording. So yeah, not to worry about Otter. I actually don't know too much about Otter, the software itself, but yeah, Dan, we'll be sending out some of the key takeaways after this for you and the everyone else who attended, just so you know.
These are great questions, though. Awesome. Thank you very much. Well, I wish you all the best of luck, right? I mean, our advice is to, as a startup, as a startup founder, my free advice is to target people that are in the industry that you're solving. People will most likely invest in topics they're comfortable with. So if someone was to ask to send me we just met someone, they're doing hydrogen power and batteries. Super cool. I don't know anything about that, which doesn't mean I won't invest, but it's like you'd have a lot better shot if you were talking to someone who understood the potential of it. Whereas if you sold me, if you were talking to me about a tool that helps, vice presidents of sales of tech companies do their job better, I'm going to be really interested in that. So keep focusing on the market you're in, and then tie it into the fact that there's an interesting way for the average person to invest in a startup that they think is interesting without being a shark on Shark's Tank. And I think that's that's a message I would take to market. I think it's really interesting.
I love that, John. This is great. We have our next steps here. Gal, would you also like to share anything as we look to wrap up?
No, let me pause sharing. I think the biggest point I would love for you to walk away from today is just don't forget the human behind the other side of the screen. And this starts with raising your first $1,000 investment through your personal network and a face-to-face conversation. And it continues down to nurturing your community, pouring into them, seeing them as humans who have their own goals and aspirations and just happen to be in this certain dynamic.
Thanks, Gal. Looks like we got one last question here from Steve. There's a certain high level of skepticism with influencers in my market space, which is cybersecurity. How would you deal with that?
I think I would find people that are, I'm not 100% sure around what the skepticism is, but if you're looking for people that are experts in cybersecurity and talking about cybersecurity all the time, they're there on social media creating content. So you would want to find someone who's pretty genuine and isn't, that's the whole point, is finding people who are passionate about the topic you're in and are maybe equally as cynical as you, right? And so, yeah, there's people out there that the ones I like, it's funny, the influencers I love working with the most are the ones who are probably doing it as a business the least. Right? It's the ones, there's career influencers where you could send them any product and they're going to sell it and that's their job. But if you're in enterprise and if you're in a market like cybersecurity, the way we would treat it is just think of it as networking, reaching out and finding those people on social who are, passionate about the same things you're passionate about. And then it's not about, hey, could I pay you some money to tell our story? It's like, hey, we're a startup. We're doing this really, really cool thing in a space that you're familiar with. Let me tell you about that. Don't you think it's cool? And they're like, yeah, this is really cool. Well, here's where we're at. We need to raise money. We've got this awesome opportunity to reach retail investors through Net Capital. Can you help us tell that story? And if you find really genuine people creating genuine content, there won't be any cynicism. But it's the influencers for hire that I think you're referring to, and there's certainly lots of them. But I think the more interesting thing is finding genuine people and then asking them to help. And in some cases, it's not even a transaction of, oh, this is what I do for a living. It says like, no, I realize that it's going to take you a couple hours to hear our story and create content that kind of tells people what we do and why it's important. I'd love to compensate you for your time, right? It doesn't have to be this transactional thing that we're used to when we hear the word influencer marketing.
I think that's a great way to end it, John. Thanks for that. All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending. We'll be sending out the recording after this, along with information about BrandPilot next steps. Any questions from this point on, we're happy to introduce you and the team, whether it's about their platform or just general questions, best practices about influencer marketing. These guys are the experts and they're here to help. We'll also be hosting a couple other events like this over the next couple weeks, so keep an eye out. Stay tuned for those on your calendars. Also, if there are any other topics that you'd like for us to cover over the next couple weeks in those events, definitely let Paolo and I know. and we'd love to hear from you all. So with that, John, Gal, thank you for joining us. Appreciate you both. Been great working with you already with some issuers, and looking forward to keeping that momentum going. But thank you also for everyone for attending, and see you all soon.
Yeah, good luck, everybody.